Traders, this video is going to be an explainer about how the head and shoulders pattern works on TradingView. Now, it's going to show you the indicator itself, which you can find in the Indicators, Metrics, and Strategies menu, and also the drawing tool, which you can find over here in the Patterns button. And then you'll see it says Head and Shoulders Pattern. So let's start by demonstrating the indicator itself and actually visualizing this indicator on the chart just like this. So right here at the top of the chart, it says indicators, metrics, and strategies. We can click that. And then in the search box, type in head and shoulders or just part of it, and we'll see it appear here. Now we've got the head and shoulders chart pattern and the inverted head and shoulders chart pattern. Keep in mind that the inverted head and shoulders pattern is essentially the same as the head and shoulders chart pattern. It's just that the inverted head and shoulders pattern is the opposite way. It's upside down, it's inverted, but the underlying principles still remain. Now, when you're ready, click the head and shoulders chart pattern, and if that pattern exists on your chart, you will see something like this. Now, what is going on here exactly, and why does this pattern mean so much? Well, in the world of technical analysis, the head and shoulders pattern is often considered sort of a distribution phase or a sign that there is potentially a lower trade to come based on the fact that essentially the symbol made new highs, great. It pulled back, went to new highs, great. But where this really becomes a head and shoulders pattern now is this final move, because now it has effectively retraced not only this prior high, but the left shoulder, the high before that high, which means that you now have a lower potential move going to the up and to the right. And you've also now established your support line where the prior two lows meet to even form this pattern in the first place. And the thinking goes that by the time the traders or investors have hit this high and also this high, if it's all now pulled back to this point here, well, it's going to take a whole lot of buying pressure to push this thing back up again after two such important levels have already been hit and have previously sold off. That over time, this pattern has demonstrated that actually this is sort of a resistance point and it eventually breaks down below that neckline. And the neckline refers to the support level here, as you can see that goes across the chart, these dotted lines. Now, this is very important, by the way, for those who are using this pattern, because understanding the basics of the head and shoulders pattern is something that will allow you to use this indicator to its maximum capabilities. Now, as you can see here, these dotted lines going across the chart all lead to that support. And then this target line is showing the potential target. So this is the head and shoulders indicator. And if you double click it, you can access the inputs, style, and visibility as needed. So as you can see here, visibility, patterns. And by the way, you have the choice if you want to see this pattern on all, awaiting and reached, only awaiting, last awaiting, and if you want to even see the price targets as well, only awaiting, awaiting and reached, or none. Now, it's important to explain what we mean by awaiting. So what's very important here is that head and shoulders patterns in the history of technical analysis often have targets, meaning if a level is broken, then it's likely based off of prior data that it's going to go to a specific level. And in this case, these automatic targets are drawn on the chart. Now, the price of this specific chart actually seemed to have found its bottom right here, which means that the target was never actually met. So in this case, it's technically awaiting to be hit. So it hasn't hit. It's not a completed head and shoulders pattern, but it did get fairly close. Now, if you double click this, what we mean by that is whether or not you want patterns that are sort of awaiting and reach to be showing, only awaiting, or last awaiting. So you get to effectively decide if you want to see these head and shoulders patterns on your chart depending on if the target was reached and or if it's still being awaited. That's just an opportunity for you to only look at patterns that potentially are still being played out. Because of course, if this chart had of course gone down to the target, well now it's already happened. Doesn't even matter to see that. It's already happened. For study reasons and historical purposes, of course, it's very interesting, but arguably, if the target's been reached, perhaps the pattern's not as powerful or as much of a trade as it is if, for example, you were to spot the pattern way back here. So that is the key factor there, is understanding if you want to see your head and shoulders or inverted head and shoulders pattern on the chart depending on its current status. The same here is with price targets. Now, you do have the ability to change the settings of this specific tool. So this says trend height. And as you can see here, it says the required minimum height of the trend preceding the pattern as a percentage of the height of the pattern. And this is going to ultimately change how the head and shoulders pattern is drawn. So if I change it to 100, which is the maximum, I've now adjusted how the head and shoulders pattern is being displayed. And look at that, it's disappeared. If I change it to 25, well, it's being displayed. And as you can see here with the trend height, you're effectively creating a threshold of what kind of head and shoulders patterns you want to see and don't want to see. So I'm at 75, let's do 65, and let's do 55. And there we go, 55. So in that case, this pattern fits into that 55 range, which again is the pattern as a percentage of the height of the pattern. So in that case, 55. But you're going to want to work with this number depending on how large you want these patterns to be, or effectively how much you want these patterns to encompass on the chart. You also have this capability to check in progress or not. And also you can change the color, look, and feel of your head and shoulders pattern, which is always quite helpful. So if you want different colors than purple, and you want to be white, you can do just that. And you can create your own fully custom and well-designed head and shoulders pattern. Now, if we go to the style menu, this gives you the ability to decide whether or not you want labels or not. Now, of course, if you uncheck them all, you won't see the pattern. But to get familiar with the labels that matter to you can be rather helpful. For example, you may not want to see left shoulder, head, or right shoulder because perhaps you have a lot of text. You just want to see the pattern just like that, no labels. In the style section, that's where you can find these details. Visibility, naturally, as explained in almost all of our videos, is the capability for you to decide what time interval you want to see this pattern. Seconds, minutes, hours. So we're on a daily chart. So if I were to take off days, I don't see it anymore. But if I go to hours and it's there, I can see it. I'm just going to turn on days because I want to keep this chart on a daily time interval and show the head and shoulders pattern to you and all of the features that come with it. Now, if you have this indicator turned on, you of course can search different symbols. I'll search alphabet here, and it will show you these head and shoulders patterns as they happen. As you can see here, I have inverted head and shoulders on the chart as well. I went to Google. There was an inverted head and shoulders spotted, and that is a fairly nice looking chart here. You can even see the target was reached. So it says status reached. Now, inverted head and shoulders is, you guessed it, just like the head and shoulders pattern, except it's upside down. We still have the left shoulder, we've got the head, we've got the right shoulder, we've got this neckline. It's just going the opposite direction. If it breaks up here, it's going through the neckline. You can think of it as a bullish move, whereas a head and shoulders pattern typically is a bearish move. That neckline breaks. So head and shoulders and inverted head and shoulders follow the same principles: left shoulder, head, right shoulder, neckline with a target price. They're just generally in different directions. Now, what's very important, by the way, about this indicator as you get started is that it's not always going to work. Like all indicators, it is attempting to show you something of interest in the world of markets based off of data, based off of patterns, based off of the study of charts. And then it's up to you to decide how you wish to utilize that information. And as you click through symbols, you will see head and shoulders patterns appear. I just went to Euro USD. This works on all symbols and all asset classes. And in this case, I'm looking at a Forex pair and I can see this head and shoulders pattern. Now, before I wrap up this video, I do think it's important to remind you that you can also draw head and shoulders. Of course, you could use something like the brush tool, and you could just draw your own head and shoulders really quickly, just like that. Left shoulder, head, right shoulder. And do keep in mind that a way to think about this is imagine there is a person standing here. Here's their shoulder, here's their head, here's their right shoulder, and they're sort of standing here. That is the way you'd want to think about, by the way, the visual and how it even got its name in the first place. So you can draw it just with your brush tool, but as demonstrated at the start of this video, there is a head and shoulders drawing tool. Now, if I click this drawing tool, I've got it selected. What's really great about this drawing tool, and I'm just going to draw it on, let's actually go back to the natural gas chart we started with. I'm going to go ahead and hide this. What you can do is effectively look for the head and shoulders you spot, and you want to draw it with the shoulder, then head, then shoulder concept in mind. So let's say the left shoulder starts here. I click, it's even tagged. So now I'm placing the top of the left shoulder. I click. Now I bring the line down because now I'm kind of, I'm closing this left shoulder. I click again. I've got head tagged. Now I'm going up to the head. I click again. Then I go down, and what's really cool is you can visualize the neckline now really nicely and watch how it fills when the neckline is connected. So it's not connected, so this is empty. So it's actually even filling these areas in green depending on how I'm drawing this. I go to this low, then here's the right shoulder, and just like that, I can close it, and I've just drawn my own head and shoulders pattern. Now I can turn on the indicator itself, and look at that. I have them overlaid on top of each other to see how I did, and I did pretty well. You can see they're quite close. There are a few things I could have done differently, but for the most part, I used the drawing tool to accomplish this design just as I needed. So you can utilize this tool by clicking it as I did, then getting started with your first click, drawing the left shoulder, then the head, then the right shoulder, and off you go. Now, one final thing that's very important about this drawing tool is remember that you have to draw with the concept of the left shoulder, head, and right shoulder in mind. Meaning, if you were to draw your left shoulder up here, and then your head here, and then your right shoulder here, you didn't really draw a head and shoulders pattern. So it has to follow the pattern that has been studied in the world of markets for a very long time. So now that you have the information you need, get out there, try this tool, see what you can do, and learn more about it. So thanks so much for watching. We hope that this video helps you get started. If you have any questions or comments, please ask us those questions in the comments below, and check out all of the other helpful videos that we have on our YouTube channel with several hundred videos, and also our Help Center has countless articles for you to also read and utilize. Thanks so much for watching.